No, that came a little bit after we thought it was going to come. Mike Priefer relieved of his duties as special team coach of the Cleveland Browns. Jeff and I will talk about what that means for the new position and the new guy that we think might be coming up to take that position in segment 2. But we will talk about the ins and out. Was it kind of a tricky little time frame? Is it strange that he got fired after Joe Woods? We'll try to talk about all these things and more in this episode of the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Your hosts, Jeff Lloyd, at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd, also from the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, radio on-air personality 92.3 The Fan, Garrett Bush at GBush91. We appreciate all of you who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day, whether it is on your favorite podcast app, always available, always free, or of course here on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, notifications on. When the content drops, you're there to digest it. And if you got Roku, go ahead, search Locked On Cleveland Sports. You will find us. You will find the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. You will get your Guardians and Cavaliers coverage as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise? If so, then this is the game definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the app stores. Our listeners will get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On, all caps, in the game. Obviously, some Browns news from yesterday. And I think on its face, a lot of people may be a little confused. But we talked about this a lot as far as, the Browns and the personnel changes. Yes, there's still openings on the Cleveland Browns staff. But once you go through this and, new head coaches are hired and guys move in and out, all of a sudden guys who are on rosters essentially maybe become available that necessarily weren't available. Mike Priefer, look, it was difficult when he was first brought here. His actions and times when he was with the Minnesota Vikings, everybody, was aware of. Would I say his units were great? Would I say his units were poor? Would I say they were in the middle? They were absolutely glaring deficiencies at times that, surfaced, the Jets week 2, of course. Cade York, his struggles on and off, but as a special teams coach, there's only so much you can do. I mean, you put the guy out there, you try to get his head right, you try to get him in the right position. He's got to get his footwork right, and he's got to make the kick. I mean, you can't do it for him. But then there becomes, I don't want to basically spill the tea here just yet. But as we mentioned, guys become available who you maybe held in higher regards. With that, now all of a sudden, he was unattainable 6 weeks ago when the season ended. Priefer, one positive I thought this year, Jerome Ford. I thought Jerome Ford did a great job returning the ball. Donovan Peoples-Jones, once Donovan's game started to excel on the offensive side, you started to see him play a little bit more looser, a little more confident, a little bit more like the pure athlete he was when he was at Michigan. So that started to come around. But I think the ultimate here was, keep in mind, the Browns have already made one slam dunk coordinator hire this year. Certainly a possibility here to make yet another one. But I think the position is, basically how do we, tell the guy in-house, in so many words, we think we like somebody better. So once you're at that point, we're just going to go our separate ways because, once I'm looking around for something else, that means I'm already willing and looking. And I don't want to necessarily just say it's an upgrade right off the bat because we don't know who this person is yet. But once you're kind of peeking over the fence, the only thing to do is basically tell the guy, that you're basically peeking away from. I think, our time together has run its course.
Yeah, listen, when you look at what Priefer did this year and a lot of other years, you look at the kickers, You look at the percentages of field goals made or missed. You one thing that I think always will put, an exclamation point and draw attention to certain parts of the organization that are maybe deficient is not being able to do the routine things. Onside kicks are so rare in the league that they think about putting other things into it as a comeback mechanism because onside kicks happen so little in the league. And when you look at a game where the two things that cost you the Jets game, which you could look at spiraled the whole season out of control, was losing a 13-point lead and under I don't know how many minutes was. I think it had to be under a minute. 13-point lead. All you got to do is cover the onside kick. You didn't cover the onside kick, and then the defense lets them walk down the field. So the two areas that guys were relieved of their duties was Mike Priefer, who should have been able to tell guys to recover onside kick, and Joe Woods, who didn't need to play shallow defense and let Joe Flacco run up and down the field. Those two things are a microcosm of why those guys are no longer here. And when you look at it, I think the timing was a little strange because in the beginning, it was almost like they were going to be content with that. It looked like they were going to say, okay, well, let's look at it in the landscape and see who's available, who's not available. They looked around, and at the time, Bubba Ventrone was not a guy who was here. He was not a guy that looked like they were going to let him off the leash and go, especially for lateral moves, right? He was a special teams coordinator out there in Indianapolis. We'll talk about that coming up in the second segment in terms of what's next after Priefer. But some question the timing and saying, okay, well, if you're going to get rid of Joe Woods immediately like that, why did you not make the same decision for Mike Priefer? And B, does that give Mike Priefer a little bit of a nasty taste in his mouth? Because as a coordinator, you want the most time possible to go out and find another job, right? If you were let go 2-3 weeks earlier, right after the season, now you can look around and you can kind of position yourself and say, okay, where's a position and where can I land? Joe Woods had that opportunity, and Joe Woods now is the defensive coordinator for the Saints. And I mean, we can't say that it helped him because he got let go quicker or that he had more time than Priefer to find a job, but that certainly plays a role. Think about it if today they didn't make a decision on Joe Woods and all of a sudden said, okay, we're going to get rid of you today. It's February 22nd. Guys have already got jobs, moved on, promoted. So for me, I expected this move to come. The timing was a little strange, but given the track record, what the defense were in the special teams, as far as the return game, guys weren't really giving you what they needed in the return game. Donovan Peoples-Jones was serviceable and things like that. But the onside kick game, the missed field goals, all of those things, I think really came out to undo Priefer.
And we've touched on this in the past. It's very rare that you keep an NFL coaching staff together for 3 seasons. It's extremely rare. And the other thing is not necessarily a good thing. You know what I'm saying? Because that means that the people on your staff weren't worthy enough to be poached. That means maybe sometimes, in years past with some of these guys, you were at a crossroads where, should he stay, should he go type of thing, and you didn't do it. There's going to be some new voices in this Cleveland Browns locker room, and probably rightfully so. We've heard Myles Garrett talk about it. We've heard others talk about it. It comes a point where, if it's the same thing, it's the same guy, saying the same stuff year after year after year, it's not viewed as motivational. It's not viewed as, trying to critique you, to tear you down, to maybe build you up. It's just you zone out. You just don't listen to it at all. So you take nothing away from it whatsoever. With the acquisition of Jim Schwartz, that's certainly going to change the thoughts of defensive players in that locker room. There is going to be a change, obviously, with the special teams coordinator, 2 guys interviewing today. We're going to move on to that here. But Mike Priefer, 3-year run with the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, a lot of people will remember him as, the guy who technically was the on-field head coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers playoff win. But I don't know if this is, one where, they just were sure they had to move on. Look, there's times in your life where you make decisions and you say, you know what, I'm going to do nothing about it at this point. But then maybe a month later, something new factors in, and all of a sudden, a decision that you seemed okay with, all of a sudden you're not okay with. And that seems pretty obvious for the Cleveland Browns as two guys in today to interview for special teams coordinator. Or it could have been as simple as, Coach Stefanski saying, hey, we think we want to change this for what you're doing. And Mike Priefer say, well, I've been doing this for a long time. And you want to know it? Well, if you're not going to change, I got to change. We've already showed we're going to change on the defensive side of the ball. Well, if you ain't willing to change, well, you can go try and do that somewhere else. Jeff Lloyd, Garrett Bush, your latest Locked On Browns. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. You've heard me talk about this mobile game app, and I can't tell you how much fun I had and Garrett had competing with our fellow Locked On NFL hosts, Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers. Chris Carter's good. Locked On Steelers. But he was our Locked On NFL champion. Well, now it's your turn to compete, but more on that later. Have you ever dreamed of becoming an NFL general manager and managing your football franchise? Well, your dream can come true, and this game is definitely for you. You'll manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through seasons, and lead your team to glory trying to build a dynasty. With Ultimate Football GM, you're responsible for controlling the destiny of your franchise by hiring the right coaches and coordinators, trading players, navigating a franchise through free agency and the draft, and all the ups and downs of a season. I need serious skill help. We're going to hope to accomplish that this offseason through free agency and certainly through the draft. All of this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free and is playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. We've created a Locked On League for you to compete against Locked On fans all over the world. Can you be the ultimate Locked On Football GM? Choose the Locked On League in the app to join. Can you create a football dynasty? Locked On Browns listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On, all caps, in the game store. That's Locked On, all caps, so make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com, Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today.
Welcome back to the Locked On Browns podcast. G. Bush is in the building. Jeff is in the building. We are here. Matter of fact, we want to remind you every single time we go upload, guess what? You can figure out if we're uploaded or not. Matter of fact, go to our YouTube page. Click the notification bell. Make sure you hit all. So every single time that we drop a podcast, you can watch that. And for those who are, using the old way, the regular way, the conventional way, which is listening on our downloaded podcast, wherever you download your podcast, continue to make Locked On Browns your first listen of each and every day. Jeff, we talked about Mike Priefer and what kind of caused him moving on. That part was not, I think a lot of people, if you've looked at the Browns, you watch the Browns play, that shouldn't come as to a shock or surprise for what we've seen during the last season. But I will say this, one of the names that comes up as a potential replacement is a guy. Now, first of all, everyone's calling him Bubba, right? Is Bubba Ventrone. Now, listen, I got to wait to see if he is hired. I got to wait to see, as a media member, I got to wait to see what he would like to be called. Now, his mother might call him Bubba. His friends might call him Bubba. But I remember him as Ray Ventrone, Brown's special team ace, played on all the special teams. He was a guy, played for the 49ers as well. Right now, he is the special teams coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts. And so I was kind of not confused, but usually what happens is when you want to interview a coordinator, right? Teams will let you interview a person if they are going to get a promotion. So if you're a defensive coordinator and you're still under contract or whatever, if I'm a Browns defensive coordinator, hypothetically, and I want to go for the Miami Dolphins head coaching job, they'll say, hey, that's a move above. Obviously, a defensive coordinator is below a head coach. We're going to let you go over there, and we're not going to hold you back because that's a great opportunity. But in this case, it's a lateral move. You're going from being a special teams coordinator in Indianapolis to you're going to the special teams coordinator with the Cleveland Browns. So I think there's an unwritten rule. If somebody, obviously in Indianapolis, they're going to be coming in with a brand new coach, right? New coach is going to come in. So I think Ventrone is thinking, hey, I don't know who you guys are going to take a head coach. I would like the courtesy to be able to go interview at a place where I'm familiar with, where they want me, and I'm interested in that job. Generally speaking, nobody holds you back from doing things like that. So what does Ray Ventrone bring to the table? Well, he brings that special teams prowess. He brings the fact that he's played on special teams. He's made his money as a special teams player. He wasn't a guy that was going to be a starter, and he brings that attitude that special teams is a thing, right? I talked to Tyvis and I talked to DeQuell Jackson, and I asked them on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, hey, like, why don't guys really draft for special teams? Why is special teams something where some teams really put an emphasis on it and other teams just feel like, okay, well, we need to cover punts and we need some bodies out there to go, return kicks. So they don't put that level of expertise, that emphasis on it. And I think one of the reasons the Browns are doing this is because I think Ventrone will bring that sense of urgency. That special teams is not just something you just, walk out. That's a part of the game, and the teams that are successful in the playoffs, look at the Sky Moore punt return. Look at things like that. They give you an opportunity. So, Jeff, your thoughts on Ray Ventrone, Bubba Ventrone, whatever he wants to be called. What are your thoughts as him as a top candidate for the special teams coach?
And just so we're not remiss here, Anthony Blevins, currently New York Giants special teams head coach, he is also in today.
Yes.
Now, look, I don't know if the way this works is if there's a Rooney Rule to be satisfied. So I'm not positive on that.
Yeah.
So with those two being brought in today, it does seem, I mean, you'd have to be blind to not think that, Raymond, no, he's going to be Bubba. Look, my father had a dog. Big old German Shepherd named Bubba. Look, first things first, any chance you could hire a guy named Bubba and just add him to look, I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's a guy. And the thing is with that type of, Bubba Ventrone was probably a guy who was laughed at when he first started his NFL career. And then all of a sudden, here's this, guy undrafted out of Villanova, and all of a sudden everyone keeps looking around and he keeps making plays and he's still sticking around and he's still here. We're talking about a guy with a 10-year NFL career. To stick in the NFL for 10 years at any position is absolutely a Herculean effort. To do it as a special teamer where, hey, sometimes, the rubber meets the road money-wise. And look, I ain't necessarily got the finances to pay an 8-year veteran just because he's a good special teamer. To get to that point in your career, then obviously – respected enough by Bill Belichick and his staff to be brought in as your assistant special teams coach, to be part of the Josh McDaniels crew that went to Indianapolis, but Josh McDaniels ultimately did not. But, Ventrone goes there, puts his name, puts his stamp. This is an opportunity where, hey, and you got to keep in mind with all these young coaches now, look, they have friends. There's a fraternity of young coaching staff. Bubba Ventrone is essentially an older guy in the room now with the Colts. And look, if it's this year, but then I might be moving on if it doesn't work out because you probably have somebody. You're waiting for him to either get freed up now by the Eagles or maybe he'll be freed up next year. So you start looking around. And, if you're Bubba Ventrone, obviously there's a franchise you have somewhat of a relationship with as a former player here. You get a little bit closer to home. We won't hold it against Bubba that he was a Pittsburgh kid, unless things go wrong, and then I'm sure it'll, absolutely be held against Bubba Ventrone that he was a Pittsburgh kid. But I think you just like the fact that different type of exuberance. Bubba Ventrone is all about this. Like this is, special teams was his life in the NFL. Special teams is his life as far as his coaching path to this point. Knows the ins and outs. He is going to take it seriously. As far as, the players here, Jerome Ford, he likes returning the ball. This doesn't happen a lot anymore. A lot of special teams coaches, ball's anywhere near the end zone. Make sure, for the love of God, you don't come out. But he encourages. I think the Colts were one of the few teams that returned more kicks last year than the Browns actually did. He's an aggressive coach. And I think that type of skill set here, when you look at Barry Stefanski, now a little bit stale after their first year of getting to the playoffs, you're looking for guys who can come in and kind of light up the room and motivate and get the best out of your personnel. And I think Bubba Ventrone is that type of guy. And anytime anybody can have an issue with him and 10 years in the NFL, son, you can say whatever you want. I played in this league for 10 years. So whatever you think of me, you want to quit this, that, and the other thing. I stuck around in this league for 10 years. Now you do that and then come sit down and talk to me and tell me about what I should be calling, with my special teams unit.
Yeah, that's the thing. That puts you at a different it puts you in a different mind state.
Automatic respectability.
Automatic. He's like, listen, this is how I make. Listen, and he tells them, listen, if you want to take care of your family, this is a hard way to do it, but there's a way to do it in the NFL. Some of y'all ain't gonna play. That's just reality of it. They hire new guys every year, so those rookies that come in, those guys are vying to be on the roster. And those rookies coming in, they've been drafted by organization. Jeff, you and I well know that they're going to get the first nod, right? Because if you receivers, defensive backs, they're going to get the first nod. So Raymond Ventrone is going to be able to preach to some of these guys and say, look, if you want to take care of your family, if you want to get that pension, if you want to stick around and be on these rosters year by year, this is the level of intensity that you got to play with in order to stay and stick in this league. And I did it. And so you already know what I feel like, how we need to practice, how we need to play. So, that energy is going to be automatically infectious, and it's going to be something people buy into.
And I got to believe, I think this is just easily going to happen. I would not be surprised if they got his word as soon tonight. They're going to go through 2 of these interviews. I think you don't go this far down the road, basically telling Mike Priefer clean out everything, unless you, A, think he will accept, and B, you're pretty damn sure that this is the guy you want. So, we'll see the way it plays out in the next couple of, coming hours or even by tomorrow. The Browns obviously are going to have a change at the special teams coach. Tennessee Titans made some moves today. Moved on from a kicker, moved on from an offensive tackle, moved on from a wide receiver, freeing up some cap space. I can already see it on social media being talked about. G and I will get to that next. Jeff Lloyd, Garrett Bush, your latest Locked On Browns.
Yes. G Bush. Follow me at GBush91. Jeff Lloyd at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. This is our great time of the year. We've always, I think, since the beginning of the year, we've done a number of podcasts. And the number one thing that we've seen happen in that at least one of our segments is it's time to get into that trade machine, free agency machines.
Picking up other people's trash.
Picking up, trying to find that diamond in the rough. The Cleveland Browns are that guy with a Hawaiian shirt and a bucket hat and some flip-flops with that old school metal detector just scraping around some beach in San Diego trying to find them buried treasures. So right now the Browns do have limited cap space. They have limited financial flexibility, have limited picks. So you already know we about to be extra over the top this year. So Taylor Lewan, a guy who has been an all-pro in this league, a guy who is a top draft pick in this league, is looking like he's going to be a cap casualty. And they cut him loose as well as Robert Woods. Now, Robert Woods would probably have more interest from Browns fans and media just because he was a guy that looked like he was going to be the Super Bowl year. Him and Cooper Kupp were having a great year. Robert Woods was a guy Matt Stafford was leaning on out there in L.A. Robert Woods was really big in Sean McVay's playbook. Unfortunately, tore the ACL, moved on as a free agent, moved out to Tennessee. He was injured back and forth this year, did not have the quarterback play, did not have the type of year he wanted to have. So, but he is a receiver that intrigues a lot of Browns fans. A guy, he's never been a deep threat. He's never been a burner, but he's a guy that can catch the football. He's a guy that can give you some run after catch. Not a huge target, but he's caught the football in this league. He's a solid veteran, and he'd be an upgrade from David Bell or Anthony Schwartz or some of these other guys who are unproven, right? And those are the type names that the Browns are going to have to look forward to, or you try to find a little diamond in the rough to help Deshaun Watson. Taylor Lewan, from my hearing, I talked to Jay and other people. He has one of the biggest podcasts in the game. A lot of followers. It looks as if he's going to be doing the same thing me and Jeff do for a living, but at a much larger level. And I add, but
hey, Taylor, you need any help, man? We love to join.
Hey, come on. He's doing this thing on the podcast level. He's good personality, and for him, it's a different thing. When you're talking about receivers, it's about staying in shape. You have to pay the prices and staying in shape and running routes. Jeff, hey, running routes, keeping yourself, being able to run routes all day, come back 7-on-7, keeping your legs underneath you. When you're an offensive lineman and you're a big guy, you don't really so much worry about the running test and whether you're in shape or not. You're worried about the physical wear and tear on your body as you go and you're banging up front every single play. I mean, I'd have to think about it twice if I had to block Myles Garrett in these games and then come back and get you some of some of these elite pass rushers like J.J. Watt. And heck, Hendrickson is a good player for the Bengals. So, those pass rushers can really take some years off your career and your life. So I wouldn't be surprised if he might retire. But Robert Woods is an intriguing prospect. Jeff, what are your thoughts on just not, the overall ability moving forward or viability moving forward? But what do you think about Robert Woods as a guy that potentially could be somebody that can help the Browns?
Well, we're going to start here. As most people know through social media, it appears that maybe, according to Mary Kay Cabot, the Browns picking up the 5th-year option on Jedrick Wills is a slam dunk. I ain't there, not at all. I still think it's to be determined. And from what the little bit I've gathered is the Browns think they could be trending that way. But also, if free agency goes their way, they understand that can eliminate the possibility of being able to pick up Jedrick Wills' 5th-year option, which means he would play out this year, and the Browns will see where they're at. If they end up losing him, it could be. But I just don't see that being set in stone. And I will say no. That doesn't mean you're going to bring in Taylor Lewan. No. Taylor Lewan, look, and if we learned anything from Joe Thomas, once he had to go through that rehab process and maintaining his body at an older age, and Joe was very, very health-wise fortunate. Joe didn't have to deal with some of these things. The things Taylor Lewan, and I think it's 34 games over the last 3 seasons, and could he maybe be, on par with a Pat McAfee type, I'm saying? Maybe, I don't know, but it is something Taylor Lewan is dabbling in. So maybe there could be one more year in the sun. We'll see what happens, for Taylor Lewan. Robert Woods, it's interesting because I don't think Robert Woods is going to command a lot of money. Titans let him walk away from $12 million this year. Titans saved $12 million. Robert Woods was miserable with Ryan Tannehill. And this was the problem with Tennessee offense is when the way Tennessee wanted to win was have Derrick Henry run 4 times a game, run for 200 yards. What the hell wide receiver wants to sign up for that? Nobody wants to be a part of that. Oh, why? So I might get a play action bone once a game? Nah, no thanks. I'm not. The last 4 games he played for the Titans, I think he had 4 for 40. I think he had a 5 for 39. No wide receiver wants to play in that. So you tell me, and look, I'm not saying David Bell is, being banished. The other guys are all in tough spots. But, Robert Woods, if you said it's 1 year, $5 million incentives based on how he produces,
take that. Man.
That might be something that's really, really hard to say no to. Because, you're trying to put Deshaun Watson here in the best possible situation to succeed. Deshaun will throw the ball to everybody. Jacoby Brissett, as well as he played, that was one issue Jacoby had, is if you weren't Donovan, you weren't Amari, you weren't David Njoku, man, you could have been wide open by 65 yards. And Jacoby, just because he was an older, slower type of guy with his play, there wasn't times where he got to his 4th and 5th read, so that's not going to be the case with Deshaun Watson. So you want to bring in a little more juice here because you're dissatisfied with the progression of the kids to this point, and that would be understandable. It would be totally understandable. Robert Woods is a name to have an eye on, you know what I'm saying? So we'll see how it plays there, but certainly some work done in Tennessee today. This work will be coming from the Cleveland Browns too. Most of it will come in restructures. Not as many, big former names leaving the building, but Tennessee Titans today are going to move on from Taylor Lewan, and they're going to move on from Robert Woods. So we're here. We are Browns wise. Obviously, the interviews are today for the special teams coordinator. It does kind of seem like, and we're just going to wait for somebody to say that Bubba Ventrone is going to be named Cleveland Browns special teams coordinator, which will make for 2 fantastic coordinator hires in a span of a couple of weeks here. Look, we can say these things and say they're great. What do we know to this point? None of it means a hill of beans unless this team goes out and wins games, Garrett.
That's it. The only thing that matters is, hey, we like the hires. Usually, generally speaking, nobody says, oh, I hate that hire. It's the worst hire I've ever seen, G. Bush. Usually people say when they get new people in, they win the press conference, they get the new hire in. Guess what, man? It works well. But they got to go out and do it, man. I'm interested in seeing the translation to it. Now, hey, look, the front office is got the hires. They got the couple of the bigger names, I would say, out here in the coaching swaps. Schwartz and Ventrone are well respected, loved, high regard around the league. Now it's time to get some of these players. Now you gotta have a splash somewhere. You got to splash in free agency. You got to trade up your sleeve. Do you hit a home run in your scouting department? Now we're set up. We're set up now where we're talking about the free agent. But guess what? 3 weeks away. Not too far away. 3 weeks. We look at it, free agency. Guys are trying to get to the combine. There's going to be some names falling, some names dropping, and we'll be here to report all of it, giving you the best Browns content on the internet.
He is Garrett Bush, Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, Monday through Friday, 11 to 1 on YouTube. On-air personality, 92.3 The Fan. Barbershop every Saturday morning. Garrett Bush at GBush91. Myself, Jeff Lloyd, at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. The show at Locked On Browns. We appreciate you all for making Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. Whether it's for free on your favorite podcast app, of course, here on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you have your notifications on so when the new content drops, you guys are there to consume it. And you got Roku, go ahead, search Locked On Cleveland Sports. You will find us, of course, the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. You'll get your your Guardians and your Cavaliers coverage as well. Mike Priefer out. We will see who's coming in. A couple of cast-offs from Tennessee. Could they possibly pick the Cleveland Browns? We got to a bunch. Do it today. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on ELOB. Let's go Browns.